Hello and welcome to the Football Club. What a week it was in the Champions League. We've got plenty to talk about over the next half hour. Here's the course we have charted for today's show. Mourinho called Juve the unsinkable ship, but two Bayern torpedoes wrecked the Italians' plans in Munich. Did Andrea Pirlo's all-at-sea performance help put wind in the Bavarian sails? Another big name blown off course was Wesley Sneijder. He looked out of his depth at the Bernabeu as Real whipped up a 3-goal storm. We'll judge whether either player is washed up. Beckham rolled back the years as PSG weathered waves of Barca attack. We'll assess Carlo Ancelotti's tactical gamble. And back-to-back may have been popular in the past, but now not so much. Why have no teams been able to navigate their way to consecutive Champions League titles in the last 20 years? Well, a member of the last team ever to win back-to-back European Cups is our star guest this week, known during his stellar career for his skill, technique and flair, a Dutch master, the one and only Ruud Gullit. Great to have you, Ruud. Join us over here. Thank you very much. Ballon d'Or winner, European Cup winner, Euro winner. I could go on and on. Pleasure to have you on. Also pleasure to have our European football expert, Mina Rzouki. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Completing our lineup, as always, is the man that adds digits to the debate. That's Ben Wyatt.
Thank you, Pedro. I'll be at the stats board putting this week's matches under the microscope. But more importantly than that, we want your views and questions to drive the show. Now, some of you have been Skyping in already. But if you want to contact the show right now, you can. You can either contact us on Twitter, Facebook, or by going to our website at cnn.com/footballclub. Now, to kick off this week, the big talking point is, did Carlo Ancelotti's tactical gamble pay off?
That is a good point to start, and I have to go to the expert on this first. Sorry, I know normally it's ladies first, Mina, but go with me on this. Ruud, a lot of questions around the lineup Carlo Ancelotti was going to deploy against Barcelona. He went with David Beckham. Were you surprised? First Champions League game in 3 years for Becks?
Of course. Surprised. I was curious about his fitness, you know. But I know him very well. He's crazy about football. He works really, really hard. He's passionate about it. So I knew that he would, wanted to play very well. Of course, he played on a position that he normally doesn't play a holding midfielder. It's an easier role because you don't need to run so much.
Yeah.
And the thing is also, with his passes, he has that. He can play a good role in that team. And of course, it is a surprise, but I think they had also some injuries. I think that Motta was injured, so for that reason, they put him there.
Beckham instead of Verratti, were you surprised?
I was incredibly surprised, and to be honest, very disappointed as well, because I think that you saw that when Verratti did come on, it changed the game. He offered them penetration. They were no longer simply a side that was just trying to block Barcelona and counter-attack, but one that actually imposed some pressure as well. They were a little bit more penetrative. He got all his passes right, so why not start him from the start?
You know, people have thought he had a good game, others thought he didn't. Let's try to break it down, because we know numbers don't lie, guys, so let's have a look at the numbers. Ben has got them over here. How can we rate Beckham's performance?
I think I'm up against it to convince Mina here, aren't I? But I think to really understand Beckham's performance, you have to know the system that Carlo Ancelotti was employing. Now, on the surface, it looks like a very compact 4-4-2, but really, it was a coiled spring for counter-attack. The likes of Pastore, Mora and Lavezzi, all very attacking players. So really, Beckham and Matuidi's role was to add protection to the back four there.
Yeah, we talked about the fact that Ancelotti could have gone with Verratti, so why did he bring in a 37-year-old who really is no spring chicken anymore to that position?
Well, arguably, I think it played into Beckham's strengths. We know he's a very intelligent player in terms of the way he positions himself on the pitch, and I think you can see here from his heat map, he was basically responding to Ancelotti's call, protecting that back four. Also, he's known for his great passing ability, long balls, which is really crucial for counter-attacking football. He's picking the ball up deep and he's spraying it long to the wings to allow Mora and Pastore to counter-attack with speed.
Okay, so we could argue he did do what he was asked to do by Carlo Ancelotti, but my opinion is he didn't do it for long enough. These are his numbers from the opening 45 minutes, and if we have a look at how they deteriorated after the break, look at this. Passes, there were less. Okay, he was less time on the field, but this is key here. The passing completion ratio went down by 15%, and only 1 interception. So really, he didn't do that well, and the key point for me as well is PSG scored both of their goals after he had been substituted, and the youngster, Marco Verratti, had been brought in.
Well, it's very compelling, especially when you can see the goals like this being scored. Yeah. All I would say is if Moura and Alex had probably made better of their chances, actually Beckham would have picked up 2 assists in the first half, and that would have helped his stats as well.
You know, I was in Paris recently, and I saw how much the players there respect Beckham. And sometimes it's not about what he does statistically, but it's the influence he has. Can that be an argument, or you're smirking because you don't go with that?
It's also marketing. It's not. You don't.
You think so?
You buy Beckham because of his skills, but also it's the package what comes with it. And you know, they will sell a lot of shirts with him.
Oh, they did. They were sold out in the main shop in Paris.
With him. He has that capability. So it's a bigger and wider package than everybody knows. So for that reason, I was thinking to myself, Paris Saint-Germain was already doing well. Okay, so why would they do that? So there is more to it than only that. And of course, if they win the championship, is it because of him? If the newspaper is going to say it's because of him, what were the others then thinking? Yeah. Because they were already there in the driving seat. So it's always difficult when you get a person like Beckham like this. He, as I know him, he wants to play football. He loves it. He loves to play. And if he got the chance of playing Champions League again, you know, why not? If he got the chance, and you know.
Yeah, I mean, I'll come to you again in a minute. I did want to bring in some tweets that we've been getting about this game. For example, I can tell you that Marisol was drawn in by the star power on display and elected to watch the game at the Parc des Princes. Sir Lotan had an interesting comment about the acquired talent of PSG versus the homegrown talent of Barcelona, while Roy Kelvin was blown away by Dani Alves' great through ball. Very quickly, Mina, on Bex, he got a 3 out of 10 as a mark from L'Equipe. I would have given him maybe a 5. If you read the English papers, it was a 7 or 8.
Yes.
So where do you stand on it?
Well, Parisien said the gamble failed. I don't think he took away anything, although one of the balls that he did lose ended up being a goal for Barcelona. But I just think that he didn't add anything. It was meant to be. He was there for the long balls and the counter-attacking game. But I think in many ways he was benefited by having Matuidi next to him, which perhaps allowed him to be the player that he was. Honestly speaking, they should have gone for Verratti.
All right, let's bring in more opinions into the show, and let's focus on Barcelona. And Ben is going to bring us in to talk to a fan who's got to talk about that.
Yeah, our first fan on the show this week is Imran, all the way from Singapore.
Hi guys, with Puyol out, Mascherano's injury has become very costly for Barcelona. Can they cope without him?
Well, Imran with his family there in Singapore talking about the fact that there are some defensive worries for Barcelona in the second leg. Mascherano injured, Puyol still out. So who's going to step in? Is it going to be someone like Busquets, like Bartra, like Alex Song, and should it be worried about containing Ibrahimovic?
Yes, of course you have to be.
Really?
I think even if they have their whole starting 11, they are defensively sort of a little bit, you know, inept at the moment. They play with a very high line. If you are a team that has, you know, fast attackers and you run at them, they look terrified. And Real Madrid exposed that time and time again. Now, what are they going to do? Both Busquets, I think, probably will drop down. I think that's who they will believe in. And they might put Alex Song in midfield, allow him a role that he understands a little bit better. But I think that when you're playing against a counter-attacking team, this is when Carlo Ancelotti's tactics will be crucial.
In just a few words, Ruud, do you see PSG having a chance at the Camp Nou to go through?
I think they have.
Really?
I think they have.
I'm surprised.
The only thing is, of course, that, you know, Camp Nou is much wider, much bigger. It's difficult to defend. We thought that Milan could do it.
Yeah.
And look what happened, you know. So it's a different ball game. You know, they have all their strength attacking. They don't need to worry so much about defending because they want defenders who can defend, you know, on midfield. And they need to be quick as well. Yeah. Of course, Piqué is not the quickest, but at least, you know, when there is some height, you know, he can help them. So therefore, if I notice also when clubs have a little more flair, they struggle.
All right.
And of course, with Ibrahimovic, who can hold the ball, who is strong enough, that, you know, gives opportunities to the midfielders to go over them. Yep. And that, I think that happened also in the second half, especially with the long ball. The last goal that they scored was a perfect example of that.
All right. Well, I don't think PSG have much of a chance, but you never know in football. Time for a break, but not before I remind you to join the conversation by signing in at cnn.com/football club. Once you're there, send in your questions and comments as well. Also, log in on match days for live stats. Ben showing how to do it very adequately. Thank you, Ben. When we come back, what happens to teams when their midfield maestros are offbeat? We try to answer. Welcome back to CNN FC. When they're at their best, midfield maestros can inspire their teams to memorable victories. But what happens when they're offbeat? Juventus and Galatasaray found out the hard way this week. Andrea Pirlo and Wesley Sneijder struggled, and both sides suffered heavy defeats. Let's start with Andrea Pirlo, guys. Mina, I'll bring you in first. I've talked to a couple of journalists who were at that game who said this was probably the worst match that Pirlo has had in a Juve shirt.
Yeah, that's probably true. And not because he didn't want to be great, but because he simply wasn't allowed to. I mean, Bayern played the type of game that totally destroyed Conte's teachings. I mean, it was a case of with Andrea Pirlo, he needs time and he needs space. And when he has Arturo Vidal and Marquisio concerned with trying to defend the wing-backs and help with that, he has no one looking for him. It was so much asphyxiating pressure from Bayern Munich. They had no option, nothing to do. Everything was too fast, nothing was well thought out. And he had 51% pass completion rate. Yeah. Terrible for him.
Yeah. You were impressed with her tactical analysis.
No,
I could tell
as well.
by her face. Yeah,
no,
but no, I want to ask
the thing is,
no. But I want to ask you.
Can I just add something to it?
Quick.
You don't listen. He doesn't listen.
I do listen.
That is his problem, you know.
Listen. Go on then.
Now, Jupp Heynckes was lucky.
I agree.
That Robben had to come in because that made tactical the best thing. Because when you play against a 3-5-2, you have to play your wingers deep. And it means that the wingers of Juventus have to play as a fullback. And then you have more space. And that was the key factor.
Well, I wanted to ask you about Sneijder. I will in a minute. Let's look closer at what
do you want to ask me? You wanted to ask me?
No, I'll ask you in a minute. I want to talk to Ben now. Is that okay? Okay. All right. Let's break these guys down. Let's ignore Ruud for just a little bit. How can we address the performances that both of these guys had, Ben?
Well, I think it's that doubling up on the wing that we looked at last week that Bayern might do that really worked here in this match. It really hampered Pirlo's performance. These are his stats, average across the season, and you can see during this game he was well down on average. Passing accuracy actually pretty close to his season average, but remember, he was the one who gave away the ball right at the start of the game that allowed Bayern to score. So, all in all, not a great night for Pirlo.
Yeah, and if you have a look also at what Sneijder did, he had a game to forget in Madrid, didn't he?
Well, let's compare Sneijder with a player from the opposition, Real Madrid, who's similar in position. This is Mesut Ozil. You see here, Ozil really trumps Sneijder on all of these stats here. And the key question is, why do you put attacking players on the pitch? It's either to create a goal or to score a goal. And I think here you can really see that Sneijder, this is during his time on the pitch, didn't really get into that final third at all, did he? Also very narrow.
Yeah, and if you compare that to what Ozil did, he was a live wire for Real Madrid all over the place, on both wings as well. And like you mentioned, Sneijder didn't do. You had Ozil going into the final third quite a bit, and his passing, very incisive, 2 key passes there. One of them the assist to Cristiano Ronaldo. So really, Sneijder taken off at halftime. A lot of people surprised. But he really struggled on the night.
That's right, I think he did. And it's something that's been getting our fans very interested as well. We have our next Skype guest. This is Rosvan from Sweden.
Hi guys, I'm a huge Real Madrid fan, originally from Azerbaijan. And my question is to Ruud Gullit. In a match between Bayern Munich and Juventus, since Pirlo had such a bad game, did you expect any other Juventus player to step up?
So who's going to step up in the second leg?
I think they're still going to play the same thing, because that's how they will play.
Needs to do more. Vidal needs to do more. Maybe Pogba needs to come in.
Look, the problem with this is I do blame Antonio Conte. I do think the 3-5-2 formation was wrong, but not because the 3-5-2 is wrong. It's because you cannot play 2 forwards that you've only ever played twice before together and have them sit at the top, be static, one's dropping deep, they don't really understand how to press the ball, midfielders are not offering them any help. You have to bolster that midfield, allow them to spread out, and there's enough time and space for Pirlo to dictate the game. That is the only way to do it.
if you want to use him in that way.
Yeah, well, we'll see. They're 2 goals down now. It's going to be really tough for Juve. We're taking a break. When CNNFC returns, we'll shine the spotlight on our star guest, who looks just a little bit different now to when he won back-to-back European Cups with AC Milan, doesn't he? Some interesting hairstyle choices from this week's star guest, Ruud Gullit, during his career. And really, Ruud, you thought this was... Right, if I can put it on. Yeah. This was a good look. And of course you had the mustache as well. Really? You don't regret this?
No. It was the time, you know. And really? It was. I was a sexy, hot guy.
Okay, we'll ask Mina that. Was he?
I'm just going to not answer that.
That's fine. Well, look.
Better now.
Look, footballers are known for setting style trends many times. That's still the case these days. And I'd like to throw out a name to you. And maybe there's something in the water at AC Milan, because Stefan El Shaarawy's hair right now, I think, is really, really silly. Look, I know he's young. I know he can experiment. I just think it's silly. Do you have someone who you think of?
Yes, for me, Carlos Puyol. I really cannot handle it, because it just never looks clean. It just doesn't look clean, and I just think, how does he have time to maintain it?
Yeah, and he looks like Medusa.
But it is him. Everybody knows it's him.
Yeah, but why don't you wake up in the morning one day and decide, you know what, I'm going to cut it today.
Look how nice.
I can grow it again.
Sergio Ramos now looks like Iceman from Top Gun with his haircut. Very nice.
Does he look sexy?
Yes, very sexy.
All right. Okay, we could talk about style forever, but let's change our focus back on football. And it's time for my weekly point of view. This time I'm arguing that the new Champions League is harder to win than the old European Cup. Why? Well, first of all, the tournament now features more clubs from the strongest leagues, and that means that the groups are super tough to get through. And then I think around Europe nowadays, you also have so many teams with so much big buying power. Look at PSG, look at Zenit, look at Manchester City. I think the competition out there is ferocious. Now, it's been 20 years, Ruud, since UEFA changed the format from a knockout competition to a group stage competition. You played in both of them. You won the European Cup before. You never played in the new one, but you've analyzed plenty of it.
Yeah.
What's tougher for you?
Now, there's two differences. Like you said, there's more clubs. You play in a group stage, and then you come out of it. You play more games than we did. The only thing is, in our days, you had to be champion. That's why it's called Champions League. So you first had to win the champion, and then you had a possibility to play in it. Nowadays, it's tougher, of course. More games. More teams that have a lot of money, that can afford it. But also a lot of people, a lot of clubs who put themselves in a difficult position to buy a lot of players and then cannot afford it. So they go in trouble, like we see now with Malaga. They get in trouble, but a whole lot of clubs do it with talent, and that is difficult. So countries who don't have that amount of money is struggling. And of course people try to do something about it, but I think it's still hard. There's always a trick to go around it.
So harder now than before?
Oh,
yes?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, let's get some more background on the history on the back-to-back winners. Ben, you've been doing some research.
Yeah, I'm still trying to get over that vision of you with dreadlocks, but let's try and go through these. Tell the story in numbers. You know I love numbers. So here we go. Real Madrid successfully defended the title for the first 5 years of the competition. And the Spaniards are only one of 8 teams to defend the title once they've won it. Now, Ruud's AC Milan were the last to achieve the feat, and since then, a few teams have come close. Milan were in 3 consecutive finals from 92 to 95, but only won one of them. Juve were in 3 finals between 95 and 98, but only won one. And the most recent nearly men were Manchester United, who are in the Champions League champions in 2008, but lost to Barcelona 2-0 the year after.
Yeah, some teams have come close, not many. Yeah. Mina, how much do you think luck plays a part? Because you have a look at what Chelsea did last season.
I think luck plays a huge part. I think that also it's now down to things such as refereeing errors and stamina. Teams who have the stamina to keep running consistently every 3 days, it's now being judged on that, which is what I find disappointing. With the old time, it's a little like looking at technique, whereas nowadays with the new format, with how many games they're forced to play, it's now focused on who can run the most. And I think that takes away something. It strips it of the beauty of football. So of course luck plays into it. They hit the post how many times, but then again, Chelsea were also knocked out by Barcelona by poor refereeing errors. So it's all balanced in the end.
Let's get another viewer involved. Ben, take it away.
Yeah, our final fan is from Germany, and he has a question for Ruud.
Good evening, gentlemen. I have a question for Ruud. Do you think the Milan team from the late 80s, which you are a part of, could repeat the European Cup double-winning feat in today's day and age? And how would you compare that team to the current Barcelona team?
Everybody wants to compare our team, with the Barcelona team. I think we were, dominating in our time, and then the same thing that Barcelona. Different style, different football, but great teams. If there is another team who can do that back to back, difficult, yes.
You would think that Barcelona would have been able to do it,
yeah.
Considering how good they've been. Back to back wouldn't be so much to ask. So what's been missing there? Is it the luck as well, like we saw last year with Chelsea? Because they dominated both games, sorry?
Or a plan B.
Yeah.
Or the fact that they can't overcome certain, especially now.
Yeah, but they cannot play in another way. That's the way they play. And I thought when they bought Ibrahimovic that they would have a plan B.
Yeah.
And then it didn't work. It didn't work. So therefore,
maybe that was
sometimes you need to have a plan B. But sometimes it's difficult. It's not easy to have a totally different thing. All of a sudden, with a team that you try to mold all these years, and then all of a sudden you say, okay, maybe we have to play high balls. It doesn't suit Barcelona.
But they're still doing that. They're just playing with Gerard Piqué up front. That's it.
Yeah,
on the end,
that's not a good plan B.
No.
Guys, time's about to run out. Before it does, let me reveal the result of the online poll. I said earlier, I believe it's harder to win the Champions League now than it was before the groups were introduced. Ruud agreed, and so do most of our fans out there who voted 79% that it is harder to win the Champions League these days. All right, the full-time whistle has blown on CNNFC. Ben's going to join us over here at our panel desk, if we can call it that. And Ruud is going to leave his mark on CNNFC. It was a pleasure to have you here.
It was a pleasure. And by the way, very good analysis. I like it.
Well, not every
very good opinion. So opinion. We like that.
Yeah, not every day you get a compliment from...
I think you're a bit too surprised.
I like it. I really like it.
All right, guys, it was a pleasure. It was a pleasure to have you there as well. If you missed the show, watch it online at cnn.com/footballclub. Thank you very much, everyone. See you next week.